Hello, today I'm going to be planting in preparation for Christmas lunch. I'm Zorab and this is Byther Farm. I'm going to start with our potatoes. Because our temperatures can drop down to frost levels or even to freeze the ground before Christmas, I'm growing in a tub, which means that I can pick this up, carry it inside into a frost-free place at the first sign of frost being forecast and allow them to carry on growing in a frost-free environment. So I've started out by putting some compost to about this level. Now you can use homemade compost. I've got some bought-in compost, and to that I've added a handful really healthy handful of blood, fish and bone meal, because potatoes are hungry feeders and they're going to be in here for quite a while without me adding much to them. So I'm now going to add my seed potatoes, and this is a variety called Sarpo Mira, and these are blight resistant. It doesn't mean that they'll never succumb to blight, but they will fight it off for a while. And these were some that I grew last year, and they have just been sitting in this tray in the sunlight, and so they have grown these little nodules. And I'm going to actually plant quite big potatoes. Now if I was planting at the beginning of the year, I would certainly not put in something this large, but because this has been sitting around for a very long time and it's already started to dehydrate a bit, I'm going to put it in at this size in the hope that there's enough nutrients and energy in that tuber to get this potato really growing. So I'm just going to put two in this pot because they are large potatoes. There's an awful lot of eyes already growing on them, and they won't have any further access to nutrition once they're in here. And then all I'm going to do is top up this tub with some more compost. Now I'm filling it to what almost looks like the very top, but once this is watered, the soil will settle down to a slightly lower level. And then, just for a bit of fun, I'm going to make a bit of a well in the top. And I like to have new potatoes at Christmas, and I like to have them minted. So I thought I would actually plant some mint in this pot. And this is a spearmint. It's just going to get disturbed when we harvest the potatoes, but that's okay. Hopefully some of the mint will still be remaining and the leaves won't have all died back, and we'll be able to use a few on our potatoes at Christmas. This now needs watering, and then I'll leave it outside to enjoy the sunshine and get the rain. If we have a very dry spell, I will keep an eye on it and check. And if it's dry, 2 or 3 inches, that's 5 to 8 centimetres below the surface level, then I'll give it a water. And then the other thing I might do in the middle of September is to give it a feed, either with some comfrey tea or something like a bought-in feed that's got seaweed in it. So that's the first element of my Christmas lunch sorted. Now this method of growing potatoes in tubs in readiness for Christmas is one of the things that I talk about in my book, The Seasoned Gardener. And it's a story of a year in my garden. What I grow, what I harvest, and my relationship with the wildlife that lives here. And so the next thing I want to think about is some seasoning or stuffing. And I like quite a traditional sage and onion stuffing. So I thought I might plant up a pot with some onions and some sage. Now I know that this clump of onions became very loose last week when I was lifting the lupins that were in the bed. So I'm actually going to split off a part of it. So these are Welsh bunching onions, and just as their name suggests, they grow in bunches. So I'm going to take off a part to put into my pot like that, and I'm going to replant the rest in the bed. So I found a pot to use. I'm going to put some compost into that, and then put my onions in, and I have a very little purple sage plant. I was given this by a friend and I hadn't found the right spot for it in the garden. So I'm going to put it in here for now, and then after Christmas I'll find a permanent spot for it. So I'm going to put that at the front. I'm going to clean up the onions a little bit if they look really scruffy. So I'll take that one out. I'll take out this dead leaf. Look at that lovely root system on that. So create a hole, in they go, and bury the roots. And then the other piece. Now this is just a bit of fun, and I'm going to take this pot and have it down by the house so I can have sage and onion to put in my stuffing on Christmas Day. I'm taking the flower heads off this. The nice thing about these onions is that they do grow very rapidly, and they will put out fresh leaves between now and when we start getting frosts. So in they go. I think I need a bit more compost, and there we go. So this is not going to work. Dearie me. Try that again. So this is not going to work so well with the standard onions that you grow from seed each year, that you grow as annuals. But if you've got anything oniony, like chives or garlic chives, or bunching onions or walking onions, anything that's perennial, they're going to work really well in this. So again, I'll need to give this a drink, but I'm not going to give it a drink yet. I'm going to wait until I've carried it down to be by the house, because otherwise I'm going to be dribbling water all over my trousers as I go. And the final thing I'm going to do today is to think about a table decoration for the Christmas table, or maybe for the table in the hall. And I'm going to use this. This is pineapple sage. It's a salvia, and it produces the most intense red flowers as we go into December. It's not frost hardy. It gets hit by frost every year, kills off all the leaves, and I always think it's died, but I keep it in the polytunnel over winter, and in the spring back it comes again. And my plan today is to take some cuttings of this, take them now and keep them, and then take them into the house in maybe mid-November, before the first frosts, and then hopefully they'll flower in December and we'll be able to use them to decorate our table during the festive period. So they're very easy to take from cuttings. I have filled a pot. Now I haven't pushed this compost down hard. I've just literally put the compost in the top. I've banged it on the work surface and allowed it to settle, because I don't want the soil in this to be really compacted. I don't want the roots to have to struggle as they're developing. And here we go. What I'm looking for is a nice healthy piece of material, and I'm cutting it just below a leaf joint, and then I'm going to very carefully remove the lower leaves. Do you know, I always find it really incredible that plants, where they've had leaves growing, when you put them in soil, they then know to stop growing leaves and to start growing roots. I just think that's amazing. So what I'm actually doing is I'm removing quite a lot of the leaves, because it is hot and I don't want it to lose too much water through its leaves. But at the same time, it does need to have some leaves so that it can create food for itself and, and then grow. So here we have the pot. I'm literally going to make a hole with my finger, push this in very gently. Now I'm not just pushing it into the soil, because the stem is really soft and I don't want to break it. So I've made a hole, I've put that in, and then I'm very gently really gently going to firm some soil around it so it's not wobbling around and there aren't any air pockets next to that stem. And I'm going to put 5 cuttings in around the outside edges. When I put the cuttings into the compost, I don't want the leaves touching the compost because there'll be a lot of moisture at soil level, which makes them more vulnerable to moulds and also just to rotting off. So there we are, 5 cuttings in place. I'm going to water them very carefully from the top so as not to get too much water on the leaves, and then I'm going to stand them in some water to allow it to soak up through the soil. And then I'm going to place this in a sheltered spot but outside, and in just a few weeks' time you may notice roots coming out the bottom of the pot and new growth at the top. I'm going to leave them in this pot even when they're in the house. I'll give the pot a bit of a wipe and put a ribbon around it, or I'll put it into a decorative bowl. So there we go, I have sorted my potatoes, I've got some sage and onion ready for the stuffing, and I've got one pot of what I hope will be really lovely flowers for the Christmas table. And if you'd like to see the results of last year's potatoes grown in tubs, I'll leave a link on the screen and in the video description.